former chiefs, senior serving officers, air warriors, military veterans, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to this 11th Eminent Speaker Series lecture. We are indeed privileged to have Professor Efraim Inbar, an old friend of India. He is the president of Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security in Israel. He is the professor of political studies at Bar Ilan University and the founding director of the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies, a position he held for 23 years from 1993 to 2016. He's been a visiting professor at Georgetown, Johns Hopkins, and Boston University, the visiting scholar at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, a Manfred Warner NATO Fellow, and a visiting fellow at the London-based International Institute for Strategic Studies. He was the president of the Israeli Association of International Studies, a member of the Political Strategic Committee of the National Planning Council, and chairman of the National Security Curriculum Committee of the Ministry of Education. He's authored 5 books: Outcast Countries in the World Community, 1985, War and Peace in Israeli Politics and Labour Party Positions on National Security, 1991, Rabin and Israel's National Security, 1999, Israel's Turkish Entente, 2001, and Israel's National Security Issues and Challenges since Yom Kippur War, 2008. And he's edited 14 collections of over 100 scholarly articles. Inbar's areas of specialization is the Middle Eastern strategic issues, with special interest in politics and strategy of Israeli national security. He is an expert on Israeli strategic doctrine, public opinion on national security issues, US Middle East policy, on Israel-Palestinian issues, and Israel-Turkey relations. After finishing the undergraduate studies in political science and English literature at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Inbar did his MA and PhD from the University of Chicago. A paratrooper in the Israeli Defense Forces, Professor Inbar later served as IDF's academic committee of the history studies. Since the beginning of current Hamas-Israel conflict on October 7, he has written articles such as Israel reels from shock, Hamas attack, and warns of a long, difficult war. He's written about Hamas war crimes, a strategic weapon for Israel in the international arena. He's written about Israel-Hamas war analysis and commentaries, and what military experts say to look out for in the Israel-Hamas war, and many, many more other articles, some of which I happen to have read. Professor is also an old friend of CAPS, having visited CAPS as an institution back in 2010, and more recently in 2022, GISS and CAPS formally affiliated with each other. Since then, we have had 2 webinars. Professor Inbar had visited India in February this year, and we had arranged a talk for him in the Air Force Auditorium Conference Hall on 6 February 2013. I myself was all booked to visit Israel and deliver a talk at GISS International Seminar early November this year. The conflict has forced Ephraim to postpone the event most reluctantly to next year. India and Israel have an extensive and comprehensive economic, military, and political relationship. India formally established relations with Israel when it opened its embassy in Tel Aviv in January 1992. 1996, the defense wing was established within the embassy, and we had ever since we have had an Air Force defense attaché there. Ezer Weizman became the first Israeli president to visit India in 1997. You would recall that Weizman served as the commander of the Israeli Air Force between 1958 and 1966. In 2000, L.K. Advani became the first Indian minister to visit the state of Israel, and relations have further expanded during the current Indian Prime Minister Modi's administration. He has also become the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel, and the relations have been dehyphenated from those with the Arab nations. Today, we are both in I2, U2 grouping. Indian and Israeli governments have stated they have deep-rooted ties, and India looks up to Israeli technology applications. India is the largest buyer of Israeli military equipment, and Israel among the top 3 suppliers of military equipment to India. IF has Israeli UAVs, Falcon radars for the AEW and C, air defense systems, radars, missiles, electronic warfare equipment, and avionics, among many other things. Military and strategic ties between the two nations have extended to intelligence sharing and joint military training. Indian Air Force has been participating in Israeli Air Force's Blue Flag exercise since 2017. There is a significant cooperation in space. There's an Israeli radar on India's RISAT satellites. In 2005, Israel's Texar satellite, it was first synthetic aperture radar imaging satellite, which was launched by India's PSLV. India and Israel have significant interest in information technology, biotechnology, and agriculture. The West Asian regional powers continue to fight proxy wars in sectarian lines, pumping large amounts of money and weapons to bolster their own favorite groups. Yet some sort of rapprochement has been taking place. Most Indians, led by the Prime Minister, have been very openly supporting and sympathizing with Israel in the current conflict. Yet we all want a long-term equitable solution for peace in the region for all. We could not have had a better person to speak on the genesis of the Israel-Palestine conflict, present situation, and the way ahead. Other than the speaker and myself, all will be put to mute. After his talk, we will have a Q&A session, which will be conducted by Air Vice Marshal Anil Gulani, who is the Additional Director General in CAPS. You all are requested to put your questions in the chat box. Now, I hand you over to Professor Efraim Inbar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your attitude toward Israel and your friendship, personal friendship, and friendship to my country. I'm very honored to speak to so many members of the Indian Air Force. I want to tell you that my encounter with the Israeli Air Force always had a certain twist. Since I was a paratrooper, I had to jump out of the airplanes and not land with an airplane, which was sometimes a bit awkward. So, but I appreciate the power of the Air Force, and a good friend of mine was very proud that Vice Air Marshal Singh, very proud that the Israel Air Force and the Indian Air Force has the same acronym. So now I'll try to brief you on the war on Hamas by Israel. And first of all, I want you to understand the importance of this particular war in contrast to other rounds of violence which we had with Hamas. Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in a military coup in 2007, and from they literally threw the PA personnel out of windows of high rises, and they took over, and since then they ruled over the Gaza Strip. And we try to coexist with this semi-state entity. It was not a very successful coexistence, let's be blunt about it. We experienced many terrorist acts. We were successful in minimizing their effect and also their number. And we were also experiencing tens of thousands of missile attacks on our civilian population. Over time, they perfected their missile arsenal, and actually most of the country is covered by their missiles, And we are talking about millions of people that are being wake up by sirens. They go to a special room which is able to absorb some kind of explosion next to it, or even a direct hit. And after 10 minutes, they go out unless there is a new siren waking them up. This type of experience has been particularly very vivid for the south of our country, which is close to the Gaza Strip, close to the Gaza border. And from time to time, Israel used its military in order, what we call in the Israeli parlance, mow the grass. We entered, we tried to punish the bad guys. We tried to destroy their arms, their factories, and they produced the missiles and went home. October 7 is a turning point. October 7, as probably all of you know, was a day full of atrocities. It is the first time since Israel's independence when civilian settlements were taken over, captured by Hamas terrorists, and many civilians were killed, over 1,300, including babies, elderly, women, children, and they also hijacked about 220 civilians. We don't know exactly the exact number because they are not willing to give us a list. And we took a terrible beating. We lost, as I mentioned, 1,300 people killed, almost 4,000 were wounded. And we are a small country. We are just 10 million people. And this was probably the worst day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And our war on Hamas is not about revenge, is not about retribution. It is about the necessary requirement for surviving in the Middle East. And this is deterrence. Basically, weaklings are not surviving in the Middle East. It's a tough neighborhood. You have to be strong, to be seen as strong, in order to make sure that you are deterring aggression. If you are seen weak, you invite aggression. It's simple. And of course, Israeli-Palestinian, conflict is not the only conflict. We have other wars in the Middle East. And this is always a rule. Unless you are able to deter your rival, your enemy, you are in trouble. Therefore, in order for us to survive in our troubled region, we must restore deterrence. And deterrence means a simple thing, that you instill fear into your enemies. And nowadays, what we have to do is to exact a heavy price from our neighbors in Gaza in order to make sure that nobody in our region in the near future has the appetite to attack us. It's simple. So we have to be strong. We have to vanquish Hamas in this war. The goal, as announced by the government, is to dismantle the military capabilities of Hamas. This is, it may sound strange, it's a modest goal. We do not want to destroy Hamas as an organization because we understand that this is mission impossible. Hamas is an idea. Hamas is an organization that has a very radical, extreme Islamist ideology that its goal is to destroy the Jewish state. They are not bashful about it. Their charter says it. The instructions given to their operatives that went into Israel mentioned it, and we have the documents. So they want to destroy the Jewish state. This organization, unfortunately, is very popular among the Palestinian society. A recent poll, September, shows that 60%, I repeat, 60% of the Palestinians support Hamas, not Abu Mazen. If there are today elections in the Palestinian territories, Hamas wins the elections. They won, by the way, the last elections in 2005. And if they'll have a new elections, they'll win again. So it is impossible to destroy the idea. We want to destroy all their military capabilities, which the meaning is clear. We catch their weapons, we kill their military leadership, we find the factories that produce missiles, destroy them. All military caches are going to be destroyed. Search and destroy. This is a mission of everything that has a Hamas signature on it. So politically, our goal is modest. Militarily, it is ambitious. This goal requires a ground operation. With all due respect to the Air Force, Israeli Air Force, the Indian Air Force, we realize that not every military goal can be achieved with air power only. And you have to realize that in Gaza, there is a network of tunnels. We don't know exactly its length. It's several hundred kilometers, maybe more, maybe over 1,000, which provides refuge for much of the Hamas force. And you cannot always destroy a tunnel from above. You don't know exactly where it is. You have to go into Gaza to find those tunnels. And it's going to be urban warfare, tunnel warfare, and to get rid of the Hamas elements. Therefore, a ground operation is needed. Israel understands it. We understand that it's going to be lengthy. You can't do, it's not a 6-day war. Urban warfare is protracted. Tunnel warfare is protracted and is costly. And Israel understands it. And despite the fact that we know that it's going to be a difficult war, we will probably go for it. And I'll say a few about the mood in the country immediately. For the time being, we see a postponement of the war, of the ground invasion. And believe me, it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating for me that I usually charge. It's very frustrating for many Israelis and many friends of Israel. And the reason for the postponement are strategic and tactical. I'm not sitting in the room that decides on the timing of the attack, but I can understand the deliberations. First of all, our important ally, the United States, is asking us for more time in order to improve the defense of the American forces in the Middle East. They also want to prepare for an evacuation operation to evacuate their citizens from Gaza, from Lebanon, from other places in the Middle East that might be in danger. Basically, the Americans also want to free some of the hostages, at least, that have an American citizenship. We don't know exactly, but about a third of the hostages have double citizenship. They are Israelis, but also citizens of other countries. And the Americans want to take care of their citizens. Don't forget, we are getting soon into an election year in America, and President Biden wants to show something to his people. This is one reason. Another reason is the hope that maybe there is now a window of opportunity to exchange prisoners, to get out some of the hostages. This is, I must say, a secondary consideration, but it's there. Politicians want to show success, humanitarian success. Also, I think there is a clear belief that the longer the air campaign is taking place, it will be easier for the ground forces to move inside. And the Air Force is pounding Hamas positions, is leveling the northern part of Gaza, where we plan to operate primarily. And this also takes time. Is it wise to wait? I'm not sure. My temperament is different, but I can understand that people, some of our leadership are more cautious than I am. And Netanyahu has a clear record of being very cautious in the use of force. In my view, sometimes overcautious, but he was a prime minister. I was a spectator, an analyst. So we have this postponement, and I would like to mention also the role of Iran. Iran is behind the attack in many ways. First of all, Hamas is to some extent Iranian proxy. It has an independent decision making, but is very close to Tehran, to the Islamist militias, to Islamic guards. Iran has funded for years Hamas. Iran has trained for years Hamas troops. Hamas received missile building technology from Iran. Iran is also smuggling weapons and missiles into the Gaza Strip via Egypt primarily for years. And it is Iran is part, maybe the head of the program to destroy the Jewish state. Iran, as well as Hamas, as well as Hezbollah, have a population-centric strategy. They understand that the Israeli army cannot be overcome by their forces. Therefore, they aim consistently at the population centers in order to make the Israelis citizens uncomfortable, and they hope that will leave. I think it's the wrong diagnosis, but this is what they think. And this is what explains their attacks on civilian targets all the time. There is another bad guy in the Middle East that is connected to Hamas, and this is Qatar. Qatar pours money into radical Islamic movements. Qatar hosts the leadership of Hamas. They live nicely in 5-star, 6-star hotels in Qatar, very close to the American base of Uday. Qatar also has a tremendous influence in the Muslim world, particularly in the Arab world, with its voice, Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is the mouthpiece of Hamas, of Islamic radicals, encouraging every radical Islamist group in the world to change the regime. Qatar is part of it. And I must say, I am disappointed with American policy. The Americans, President Biden, did mention that Hamas is the enemy of humanity because of its barbaric acts. I agree. But what about its sponsors? Iran, Qatar? Not too many words about it. I know that there is concern about this world being expanded, about escalation. This is a clear possibility. We see already that on the northern front, Hezbollah is attacking Israeli targets. At this time, at a very low level. There is low intensity in the attacks on Israel. But it seems to signal to Israel that if Israel will go and for a ground operation, they may escalate in order to make the life of Israel more difficult. Now, Hezbollah is a clear Iranian proxy. In Hezbollah, I don't think it has an independent decision-making capability. They take orders from Tehran. And if we're talking about a multi-front war, we are talking not only about Hezbollah, we are talking also about Iranian militias in Syria, on Israel's border. And we are talking also about Hamas cells in the West Bank, and even among Israeli Arabs. To make it perfectly clear, most Israeli Arabs are law-abiding citizens. But it's enough to have a few thousand of them making trouble, rioting, blocking roads. This is a problem for Israel. So the potential for escalation is decided in Tehran. If Tehran believes that at this moment Israel is weak enough and a multi-front war will bring about an exodus of Israelis from Israel, they may decide to ignite a multi-front war. It's not an Israeli decision. It's an Iranian decision, and it remains to be seen how this issue will develop. Much depends, of course, on the success of the operation, of the ground operation. If we are very successful in a rather short time, maybe this will deter the Iranians for going for a multi-front. What I described is a difficult situation for Israel. The only light in the situation is the Israeli spirit. Israeli mood is divided into two. One, very gloomy because of the losses we have taken, very disappointed at the initial surprise. How can it happen? And at the same time, determined to go to war and vanquish Hamas. And you have to understand, Israelis, many of them, have military experience and understand very well the consequences of such a ground operation, particularly when having to deal with urban warfare and tunnel warfare. Everybody understands that there will be a lot of funerals within the war and after the war. And still, we are ready to go. You can see in many airports throughout the world, Israelis staying in line for a day, 2, 3, to be able to board an Israeli airplane to go home and fight. Those are young people that could stay abroad. No, they go home and report to their units. Actually, in some units, we have over 120% reports. What does it mean, 120? So people that were discharged from their unit because of a variety of reasons, age, health reasons, they still come back and to report to their unit. So this is the spirit of the nation, and hopefully, everybody hopes that we'll win. A few words about the international arena. Of course, there is a lot of support in many capitals, particularly in the democratic world, for Israel after seeing the atrocities committed by Hamas. So there is support for a war against Hamas. In capitals or just people understand that Hamas is bad news for humanity. And they hope that Israel will deal with this issue in an effective manner. The Americans showed great support. They sent 2 aircrafts, but the American support and involvement is also a bear's hug. They are, as I mentioned before, trying to postpone, to delay the attack. They take care of their own interests, obviously. Their most important interest is that there will be no escalation. They don't want an escalation because it will threaten American troops in the region. They don't want an escalation because an escalation might bring about a multi-front war in which Iran's role will be very clear. And America, this administration, wants to maintain the tacit nuclear deal with Iran. This is one of the successes of the Biden administration, perceived successes. So they want to keep it. They don't want too much trouble in the Middle East. Of course, they don't say anything about Iran. They don't say anything about Qatar. If Hamas is the enemy of humanity, what about their sponsors? They are quiet about it. Also, the Americans are pushing us into position we don't want. For example, to provide humanitarian aid to the Gazans that fled south. We eventually agreed that humanitarian aid will come from Egypt. Today, the issue, I'm not sure you are aware, Gazans want also gasoline. Gasoline is needed for the Hamas military effort. We don't want to strengthen Hamas. We don't want to lose our leverage over Hamas. And Biden is pushing Israel into accepting the flow of gasoline into Gaza Strip. I hope we'll be strong enough to tell the Americans, we like you, we appreciate your support, but certain things we say no. We are a small state. We have to understand, it's not easy to say no to our main ally, superpower ally. So the American role, which is welcome, is also problematic. And we have to deal with it. I hopefully will deal with it in the smartest way possible. There's another problem with American involvement, and this is what we call in Israel the political clock. In every war that Israel was involved in, after a certain time, the international community, particularly the United States, stayed enough and imposed upon Israel a ceasefire. And I'm afraid that this time, because of the postponement of the ground operation, we may have not enough time to accomplish our mission. It will be a disaster if we are not able to accomplish our mission. But we should be aware that, particularly after pictures will come out of Gaza, the international community, which is sensitive to Palestinian suffering, less so to Jewish suffering. I'm not sure you are aware. There are over 1 million refugees in Israel that cannot live next to the border. The international community cares less about the Jewish refugees than about the Palestinian refugees. So we may see at a certain point that Israel will have to agree to a ceasefire before finishing the job. We have to finish the job. And because, and I started with it, we need deterrence. Unless we accomplish deterrence, we may lose our country. We may lose our state. And this is why this war is so extremely important for Israel. I want to thank Indian support for us. I'm ready to take questions now.
Efraim, for a wonderful talk. You've given us, I'm ABM Golani here. I couldn't meet you last time as I was traveling when you had come to CABS for the talk. I was in Singapore. So what I'll do is I will just look at the questions and maybe combine two of them so that you can give an answer so that we can get more questions, more information from you. The first question is about the human intelligence capabilities that Israel has inside Gaza, And how did the Israelis fail to predict that, this kind of an attack of 5,000 odd rockets would take place on October 7th? And the second is it because of, too much reliance on technology for intelligence, replacing technology with the man or the soldier, or overconfidence or internal politics in Israel? Your comments on this?
First of all, we were indeed surprised. It was a strategic surprise. We don't know yet exactly why. I'm sure this will be thoroughly investigated after the war. One reason for being surprised was the assumption or the conception that Hamas, being not only a terrorist organization but also a governing body, will take into consideration the needs of their population and will be deterred. They will not like to pay a heavy cost for aggression. We are wrong. And I think partly it is because secular elites do not understand the power of religion. Hamas is a religious organization. They believe that God is on their side, and you cannot really have a better ally than God. God is infallible. God is going to prevail. So this is the main reason. Probably there will be more reasons after the investigation. We decided all this will be dealt after the war. And about low tech and high tech, I think that there is an addiction to high tech among many military establishments. And we should have, rearrange the balance between low tech and high tech. You cannot rely only on high tech. And we learned a lesson, definitely. This is quite clear. They were successful in blinding all our sensors, just by snipers, which is low tech. I'm not sure, if you are aware, we of course have full coverage, electronic coverage over the whole area, West Bank, Gaza. There is nothing that has an electronic signature that we do not detect.
Yeah,
But some Palestinian organizations use pigeons for communications. And we know pigeon is low tech, and they are not detected by radars. What can we do? So this is indeed an important issue that has to be addressed by all military.
Thank you, Professor Efraim. You did speak about the role of Qatar in this crisis. If you can elaborate a little bit on that, as well as your thoughts on the recent changes in relations between Israel and the Arab states, in your opinion, has this contributed to this conflict which is ongoing now?
Well, to make it perfectly clear, most Arab states are hoping for us to win the war. The Hamas is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, a radical organization that tries to change the regime in most of the Arab world. So Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, with the exception of Qatar, are all hoping for an Israeli victory. They are not going to say, there is difference in the Middle East from what you say and what you do. They are not going to say it, but they hope that we'll do it. By the way, I'm pretty sure that unless will have a resounding victory. The peace treaties are in danger. The Abraham Accords are predicated upon a strong Israel that could help them against Iran, particularly when the United States seems to leave the region. So they want a strong Israel. They don't, whatever they say, whatever their press is saying, it's their survival interest of the elites is a beating of Hamas. By the way, Qatar was isolated for some time by the Arab countries, but this isolation process failed because the Qataris have a lot of money. You can buy many things with money. And of course, they buy influence in America, they buy influence in Europe, many soccer teams, football teams carry Qatar Airways, they have a lot of influence. They built a very effective lobby in Washington. And even Washington declared Qatar as a non-NATO ally. When Qatar is helping Iran to circumvent American sanctions, when Qatar subsidizes radical Islamic movements in America, still, despite, in my view, being very clearly a very hostile element in the international arena, they still buy their way out. And I think that Israel should exact a price from Qatar. Gas fields, you come with matches, can cause a lot of trouble, a few matches. So
Israel has unlawfully occupied their land, and the other thing is the question on the anti-Israel feeling, which is not limited to individuals, but is an ideology with the Palestinian people. And if you look at the United States, it was not successful in eradicating the Taliban ideology or ISIS ideology in more than 20 years. And do you think the Israeli approach will succeed? And what is the end state of at which Israel will call off operations of what is Israel looking at?
I understand very well that the Americans were unsuccessful in Afghanistan, unsuccessful in Iraq. Their attempt at political engineering in creating, democracies in those countries was an utter failure. Actually, when I was in Washington telling my friends what they should do, I always told them, go in, beat the hell out of the leaders, try to put your own son of a bitch general in power, and get out. I'm talking, in military terms of punitive expeditions, Roman style. There are certain areas in the world you cannot fix. Not every country is able to become a democracy. Let's face it. We have no ambition whatsoever to fix the Palestinians. That's quite clear. We said already, quite clearly, the government said, after the ground operation, we have no plan to stay in Gaza. We have no ambition to rule over Gazans. We want them to be responsible for their own future. They are not very good at that, by the way. It's not only them. They established in the West Bank a failed state. Gaza is an product of a failed state. A state is monopoly over use of force. The Palestinian Authority was not able to have monopoly over use of force, and the militia named by Hamas took over Gaza. In the West Bank, they lost control over several cities, Jenin, Nablus. The Palestinian Authority hardly controls effectively Ramallah. There are people that think that, okay, the Gaza should be given to the Palestinian Authority. That's nonsense. Many Arab countries are failed states with no ability to exercise monopoly over use of force. Look at Syria, look at Iraq, look at Yemen, look at Libya. This is a political illness. This is part of the very problematic Arab political culture. So we are not in the business of governing over the Palestinians or trying to make them a nice democracy. So what will happen in Gaza after we finish the job? To put it very bluntly, it's not my problem. I want only one thing: to maintain freedom of military action, to hit the bad guys again and again when it is needed. We don't mind Somalia type of chaos. It's their problem. It's their responsibility to establish an effective government. It's not our responsibility.
Thank you, Professor Emram. The next two questions, are related. One is considering that Iran has less control over Hamas as compared to the Hezbollah, do you feel Russia would have a role to play in this, to shift focus from Ukraine? And what, in your opinion, was missing in deterrence till now, which emboldened the Hamas to carry out this attack?
First of all, hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you. Yofi, good.
Yeah.
I was the architect of the grass strategy, understanding that you cannot change Hamas. And I advocated always military action in order to minimize the military capabilities of Hamas. The failure of deterrence is tied to our reluctance to use frequently enough force to eliminate the military capability of Hamas. We became addicted to a formula which said quiet for quiet. But quiet gave Hamas the time to arm themselves, to train, to improve their military capabilities. And I understand for politicians it's not difficult. It's not easy to command the military to go to war and to have funerals. It's costly war, financially. And it's easy to fall for the illusion that if we allow them to live well, they'll allow us to live well. With Hamas, it didn't work. So the basic, in my view, the basic reason for not having deterrence is that we did not maintain the deterrence. Maintaining deterrence requires demonstration of use of force, not only capability, but also political will. And despite of having the military capability to hit Hamas once in a while, we did not have the political will. And this is why we had a deterrence failure. You are muted. I don't hear you.
You are muted.
Yeah. I am.
Now
Professor
I hear you.
Efraim, there is a perception that Israel is losing the narrative because with every passing day, it is only the sufferings of the Palestinian which is being depicted. What about the suffering of the Israelis abducted and displaced, and what is Israel doing to stop this narrative? And do you feel, in your opinion, as a permanent solution to this problem, could NATO play a role in this?
There are situations in life which there is no solution. Probably, most of our audience today is married. And in marriage, you live with continuous friction. Families, have the prerogative of divorce. Hamas doesn't want to divorce. They want us. So I don't think that there is a clear solution in the near future. About the narrative, what's called the narrative. I agree with the diagnosis that we may lose the narrative war. And one of the reasons I'm talking to you, and talking most of the day to various audiences is try to recapture the moral ground. But the international media is very left-leaning. And we don't get a fair hearing. It's not something new. I'm not sure the Indians get a fair hearing in the international media. So we cannot shoot journalists. So it is, they are with us. We do our best to try to explain to them. But it's terrible what's happening in the universities, what's happening in journalist schools. They grow with a twisted view of life. And so I complain, many Israelis complain, probably some Indians also complain about the international media. That's life. What is important is what's happening on the ground, less on the screens.
Correct.
And the screens, I do not belittle their importance. I do not belittle the importance of the newspapers, of the media. But what really will determine the result is what we are doing on the ground. And hopefully we'll do well.
Thank you, Professor Efraim. Marshal Chopra, DG wants, his question is that Israel practically controls water, electricity, food, gasoline supplies into Gaza, and also the airports and the seaports are under Israeli control. To what extent can Palestinians start operating as an independent state if this is the situation that is going to continue?
Well, they have a clear choice. First of all, it's not a full quarantine. They have a border also with Egypt. So, but the Egyptians actually participate in our struggle against Hamas in a more limited way. The Hamas has a choice. Hamas can say, we don't want to fight Israel any longer. We'll change our education system. We'll try to teach coexistence. And then there will be no problem. For us, will not. Why is there a quarantine? Because we don't want them to get weapons. By the way, we are, I must say, stupid in providing them water and electricity. Why should we equip Hamas with water and electricity? I don't remember the Allies in World War II providing Germany with water and electricity. It's an enemy. We are at war with them. We are behaving in a very humanitarian way. We tell the citizens of northern Gaza, move away. This is going to be a war zone. We tell them by radio, by leaflets, by telephone, we call them in Arabic. We tell them, move, be careful. We are taking care, we don't want you to die. What more can we do? Hamas can say enough is enough, but they cannot. They are ideologically committed to the destruction of the state. So we don't want a state next to us that wants our death. Simple. So we do what we can in order to prevent them becoming stronger. I don't think we didn't do enough. We should have done much more before. If the Palestinians want to be a good neighbor, ahlan wa sahlan, sure, go ahead. Change your education system. Don't incite anymore against Jews, against Israel, and we'll be a partner. But they are not doing that. If they'll do it, we can cooperate and have a wonderful Middle East. We cooperate with other Arab countries for the mutual benefit. Why don't the Palestinians emulate what Abu Dhabi is doing, the Emirates, what Bahrain is doing, or even Egypt? They are not interested in having peace with Israel. Simple. So we are not going to help them, to become stronger. It would be idiotic to help them to become stronger.
Professor Efraim, the next question is, as the Hamas has taken the war to the tunnel infrastructure, and going inside by the Israeli Defense Forces would certainly entail heavy casualties, like you also mentioned. Are the CBRN options on the discussion table to take on Hamas inside the tunnel infrastructure with safety and efficacy? It'll ensure safe usage of CBRN options inside the tunnel and also lead to a early termination of the issue or conflict.
Israel has a very good technology in locating tunnels. Moreover, the Israeli army is training for tunnel combat. It's developing doctrines, a doctrine to fight in a tunnel and how to do it. We build tunnels in Israel and the military is training. That's what Israel is trying. Of course, if we can bomb some of the tunnels from air, we do it. If we can, every tunnel has an opening. Can destroy the opening, block, electricity, water, whatever. Those are very intricate and sophisticated tunnels. It's not just, I've been in the DMZ of Korea. It's not a Korean tunnel. It's much more elaborate. So it's not going to be easy, but we have to do it.
What, in your opinion, is the best outcome of the war for Israel, and what is the worst outcome that Israel doesn't want or is not expecting? I think you did talk about it in your talk, but if you could, elaborate upon this one.
The best outcome is simply to vanquish, to annihilate the military capabilities of Hamas. This is the best outcome. This is a goal. Of course, a very bad outcome will be if we'll have not enough time or talent to do the job. Yeah, would be very bad because it will further erode our deterrence, which is critical for our survival.
Understanding that one of the goal of the hostile elements is to derail the convergence of the Arab world and Israel, and you talked about the Abraham Accords. Is there any hope that convergence is retained after the conflict is over?
If we win the war against Hamas, everybody or most of the people in the Middle East, with the exception of Iran, Qatar, will be very happy, and we'll go back to business as usual. That's the best outcome most of the countries in the Middle East are hoping for. Also, vanquishing Hamas will weaken Iran, which is very feared by most Arab countries. A victory over Hamas will weaken the Russian, Chinese, Iranian axis in the Middle East, which is something that the Americans should share an interest. Maybe you and the Indians should share an interest. There is a growing presence, Chinese presence in the Middle East, which is not viewed in Israel as positive. The Chinese position on this conflict was terrible. They even didn't say one word against the atrocities committed by Hamas, and they called for a ceasefire. They voted at the UN for a ceasefire, the Chinese, the Russians. A ceasefire basically tries to tie the hands of Israel. So this is our position, and I have recommended already to my government that the policy toward China should be reconsidered.
Thank you. We are running out of.
I don't hear any question.
Yeah, there is some problem on his audio. Can you hear us, Anil?
Yes, I do hear you.
Yeah.
No, you can hear me, but can we hear? Yeah. Anil, are you there?
I'm there, sir. I'm there.
Yeah, okay. You can put the question again because we couldn't hear you. Yes.
Yeah, Sir Ephraim, I think you talked about the aerial attacks without any ground operations. Isn't in your when sympathy or the
I understand the question.
So the question is that
I understand. More
yeah.
important than the sympathy of the world is to vanquish Hamas. The Jewish people have lived with not much sympathy for much time of its history, particularly European history. So we can manage if we are not very much liked. We are used to it. What is important is to destroy our enemy. And this is what should be done. Is it too late? It's never too late to do the right thing. I understand that the circumstances may be less auspicious, but still we'll have to do it. Israel, in my view, has no alternative but to go in and eradicate Hamas. The military capability, I made it clear in my talk. So what has to be done? This has to be done. If the world likes it, fine. If they don't like it, too bad.
Yeah. Okay. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Efraim, for that talk. And I think we in India do understand the position of Israel because we ourselves have been victims of terror. And we are with you at this point of time. And on behalf of Director General Caps and the entire Indian Air Force, former chiefs, and the fraternity who's listening today, I would like to thank you once again for this wonderful talk. And may for
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Efraim. Always a pleasure listening to you, and we are looking forward to the war coming to an end quickly, so that we can do some more events together between CAPS and JISS. And all the very best to you all. And we hope that not too many lives get lost on either side in the coming days. Yes.
I am at your service always.
Thank you so very much, and all the very best to you and to Israel. Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of this talk. And God bless you all, and have a great night. Bye-bye. Yes.